Would you buy a stigmatized property?
Ooh, what does that mean?
Well, according to NAR, a stigmatized property is a property that has been psychologically impacted by an event which occurred or was suspected to have occurred on the property.
So what is this? Things like if somebody dies in the house?
Somebody dies in the house, if it was a drug dealer's house. Like
Ooh.
our last house was a drug dealer's house. So we did buy a
You did buy a
stigmatized.
stigmatized
We
property.
did.
What about houses that cycle on and off the market? So you see it come on, comes
So
back off, comes back on.
I would say in this market that would fall into the category, right? Something happened. It sold immediately, right? And then something happened and it came back on the market. And so buyers are wondering, like, what happened?
And
Yeah.
what stings for those situations is very often the house and or the seller's not the problem. It's often the buyer who's actually the problem in those cases.
Yeah, usually. Yeah. Sometimes financing doesn't go through or they just get spooked. Like, everybody has a different level of tolerance when it comes to improvements on a house because no home is perfect. We've talked about this. Yeah. Crumbling foundations.
Ooh, that is definitely a stigma here in Connecticut right now. That's not a nationwide problem. It's a very localized problem here, really in Eastern Connecticut. And that is a huge stigma because it can be very expensive to fix. And sometimes it's hard to get lending on.
Yes. Actually, isn't like lending just starting to become available because it wasn't up until recently.
Yeah, the houses could not get loans. What about deaths? Is that something that you run across as a realtor?
So sometimes people are very curious. So I guess it depends. Was it a violent death or was it a natural death? Did somebody pass peacefully? Because that makes a difference for buyers.
You probably have to assume in any house over a certain age,
somebody's died.
Probably somebody's died in your house.
At some point.
One of the things that you can do, truthfully, is just use Google. If you're looking at houses, Google the address.
Yeah, a lot of things will pop up.
You'll see, if there was arrests at the property, if there was an article written about the property, news story about the property.
In fact, like a lot of times my buyers will say, oh, like, is this a safe neighborhood? And like as a realtor, we are governed by things that we are and are not allowed to go into. Because everybody's definition of safe
is very different.
Yeah, it's different. So what I typically advise my clients to do is to call the non-emergency police number and to ask about it. You can do that about the house itself too. Like you can ask specific questions on, have there been any phone calls made to this address? Because it's public record, I believe.
Yeah.
So
now what is your thoughts? The question gets asked a lot is, well, realtors have to disclose if somebody died in this house.
So we put it in writing and we send it to the other side, and however they respond is how they respond.
But it doesn't have to be disclosed from the get-go necessarily. So you're not necessarily going to see it in the MLS description, like someone died in this house.
It's not exactly a selling point unless you're a paranormal, like, activity seeker.
Yeah. So no, you're probably not going to hear about it. What are the benefits of buying a stigmatized home?
So typically from a buyer's standpoint, you have a little bit more wiggle room, a little bit more negotiating power. And, I always talk to my buyers about like, what is the future? Like what are the future potentials of this house versus like focusing on the past and what happened to the house? Like our house, like I didn't care that it was a drug dealer's house. We did have some concerns about strangers maybe coming by thinking the previous owners were there, but we gutted and we did the whole thing. So we weren't really too concerned, but we got a good deal and we spent a few years there and really enjoyed it.
So it's one of those things in this, especially in this market right now, a stigmatized house doesn't have to be a no-go. I would encourage you, if you see, especially in this market, a house going on and off the market, call and ask. Call your realtor and say, hey, can you check with the listing agent to see why this house went off on and, back on again? What happened? Because it may be nothing. And the fact that it's stigmatized might help you instead of be a hindrance. But you don't know unless you ask.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just the poor luck of the seller. Yeah. Like it's just bad luck sometimes.
Absolutely.
So yeah. Well, thank you for watching.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon.